What should you be looking for when you get multiple offers? This market is crazy, crazy hot, and we're seeing homes get multiple offers again. We're seeing open house lines all the way around the block. This might seem amazing to you as a seller to get 20 to 30 offers on your home, but what's most important is to get to the settlement table. I'm Kat Massetti, and I'm with the Haven Group and eXp Realty. I'm going to teach you the tips and tricks on how to know which offer to pick when you have a whole bunch of them in front of you. Number 1, picking the right agent. What does a good agent look like? Well, the good agent is the one that is doing this full time. You definitely don't want to pick somebody who is treating this as their side hustle. And you want to make sure the agent that you choose to work with is extremely communicative and responsive. You want to make sure that they will answer the questions that you have for them in a timely manner, and making sure that they're extremely experienced. So before you look at the offers, make sure that your agent's vetting the other agents out in front of you to ensure that you're going to pick the one that is the utmost professional. Number 2, you want to pick the right lender. The right lender is one who is typically a local lender because they know this local area and they know this market very well. You also want to make sure that they're available after hours. Some lenders, they only work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and you want to make sure that if you have a question after hours or on the weekends, that the lender is available to answer any of those questions. Also, a local lender typically has a local panel of appraisers. And where this is important is because you want to make sure, especially in this escalating market, that the appraiser who is going to appraise your listing will do so accurately. And normally, a local lender has a very dedicated, specific panel of appraisers that they can choose from who will be appraising the property. So you want to make sure that the appraiser who's going to come out and take a look at the property and value it for the buyer is one who knows the market and who knows the area very well. So that way they can have a very accurate value of what the home is. Once we check out the agent and the lender and they both check out and everything is good, then we're going to look at the offer and what the terms are that the buyers are submitting. There are 2 ways that a buyer is going to present their sales price. One is they can present it straight out and they can offer you what they're going to offer as a sales price. Number 2 is that they can use an escalation addendum. The way the escalation addendum works is that the buyer is going to increase their sales price to a certain max amount, a set max amount. So think of it kind of like eBay or like a silent auction, where each of the buyers are going to submit their offer with their final escalated price. So let's say, for example, the house is listed at $500,000. And you have multiple offers that come out, and the most highest priced offer escalates to $550,000. That's great, right? You're getting a $550,000 sales price on a $500,000 list price. But wait a second, because that escalated price only works if there's another offer that's going to escalate the price. So you will only reach $550,000 if another buyer also submits an offer that will push the price up. So you're only going to get that $550,000 price if the next highest offer is, let's say, $445,000, and the $550,000 offer has an escalated price of an increment of $5,000. So you'll take that second highest offer, which is $445,000, and you will escalate it up to whatever the terms of the highest escalation is. Once we get past the sales price, we also have what's called earnest money deposit. So the earnest money deposit is what the buyer is setting forward as their good faith deposit. They're saying that I will put forward, let's say, $10,000, and that earnest money deposit will be held by the title company. And once the buyer completes the sale, then that earnest money deposit will be credited to their closing. So that's the money that the buyer has put in the game as their skin in the game to show you as a seller that they are committed to going forward with the contract. Because if they back out of the contract without a contingency in place, that earnest money deposit can actually be yours. So in Northern Virginia, we are seeing earnest money deposits typically between 1% to 2%. 1% in a non-competitive situation, and it goes up to 2% or beyond in a competitive situation. So if you have a $500,000 list price, typically you're seeing earnest money deposits from $5,000 to $10,000. If the buyer wants to be even more competitive, then they will put in an earnest money deposit of anything greater than $10,000. So it just depends on how committed the buyer wants to appear on the contract. Something else to consider when you're looking at all the offers is the settlement date that the buyer is proposing. In general, loans are being closed between 21 to 30 days. If they're paying with cash, then they can do an even 7 to 10 day close. So it depends on how they're financing the purchase. But typically most buyers are using a loan. So you would want to make sure that the buyer's lender can commit to whatever settlement date that the buyer has put on the offer. Sometimes buyers will put in a settlement date of even 14 days for a loan. And some lenders can do that. It just depends on how far along the buyer has gone through in the loan process for the lender. So if you have a buyer who says that they can close in 14 days with a loan, you just want to make sure that your agent's asking the lender whether or not the lender can commit to that and whether or not that file has gone through underwriting already to speed up the process. Additional terms that you want to consider when you're looking at all these offers is inspection. So yes, inspections is, something that every buyer, I think, wants to have in their due diligence process. However, in reality, a lot of buyers are waiving their home inspections right now in order to win the contract. So you have to take a look at the inspection terms to see what inspection clauses the buyers are presenting for you in the offer. Some of the examples of how buyers can present their inspection offers is doing it as an inspection with negotiations. That's going to be the least competitive one because they're going to do the inspection and then they may ask you for repairs. 2 is they can do an inspection void only. And the inspection void only means that they'll do the home inspection, but they'll take it or leave it. However, I will say 50% of the time, based on the inspection, the buyers would try to ask the seller for something. So don't be surprised if you get an inspection void only and the buyer's agent tries to negotiate something. It's up to you as a seller whether you decide you want to accept that negotiation or not. So that's your call as a seller. Another way that the buyers can offer for the inspection process is to do it as a pre-inspection. So what a pre-inspection entails is that they'll try to do the home inspection before they submit the offer. So that way they can submit the offer without the home inspection contingency and they've already done the offer. Now, when I discuss this with my sellers ahead of time, I tell them the risks and rewards for allowing a pre-inspection. A pre-inspection means that the buyer can come in prior to the offer presentation. So the risk is that if they were to find something in the home that's of material defect, then you as a seller may have to alert that to all the other buyers. So depending on how risky you want to be as a seller and whether that you want to take on that risk before you get all the offer presentations, it's just ultimately going to come down to whether you want to allow the inspection to happen before the offer or not. And then lastly, what sometimes can happen is, like I said, during this competitive environment, is that the buyer is going to waive the inspection completely. So that's happening more and more, especially as we get into these offer presentations of 10, 15 plus offers, that the buyers are going to be waiving them, and then the seller doesn't have to go through the inspection process at all. So there are a couple contingencies in the offer that you want to consider when you're looking at all of them. One is the appraisal contingency. So the appraisal contingency means that the lender is going to send out an appraiser. They're a third party and they will value the property. And depending on what the appraiser says about the value, that is what the bank is going to give the loan for. So if we go back to our example of the $500,000 list price and it goes all the way up to a $550,000 escalation, that means that if the appraiser comes out and values the home at, let's say, $525,000, then there's going to be a gap of $25,000. The appraised value is $525,000, so that's what the loan amount is going to be, but the buyer has committed to doing a $550,000 sales price. So in this escalating market, what buyers are doing is they're going to waive that appraisal contingency. So they're going to say, I'm going to pay $550,000 regardless of what the appraisal comes in at. This is where it can get tricky for you as a seller to decide whether that buyer is capable of covering that gap or not, because the loan can only be $525,000 and they will have to make up that gap of $25,000. So this is where you as a seller would want to ask your agent to dig into the finances of the buyer buyer and determine whether they are truly capable of the gap or not. So that's where also the down payment can come into play as a buyer, because as a higher down payment buyer, they have more wiggle room as far as what their funds are to be able to complete the loan. So you just want to take a look at what their finances are and to ensure that they're able to make up these gaps in value if the appraisal happens to come in lower. Lastly, we want to make sure that the financing is approved. The buyer can't purchase a home unless the loan can be closed. So you want to make sure that your agent is digging into the buyer and also digging into the lender and making sure that the lender has pre-approved the buyer, and more importantly, would be to have them go through underwriting. So you want to ask your agent to make sure that the buyer has been through the underwriting process already, so that will make the financing much more smooth. The buyer can waive the financing contingency, and what that means is that if for some reason the loan can't be closed, and that's usually that the lender hasn't vetted the client well enough, or that the client loses their job and then they can't complete the financing, that would be the risk if they waive the financing contingency, that if they can't close the loan, then they would lose their earnest money deposit to you, the seller. So these are all the things that you want to think about when you're looking at all of these different offers as a seller. And it can seem very overwhelming, and trust me, I am handling it as well as an agent. And you need to make sure that you are having a experienced agent helping you through this process. Somebody like me. I'm Kat Massetti with the Haven Group and eXp Realty, and I'm here to empower you to make your move. If you have any questions at all, or you want to talk more about real estate, just give me a call or subscribe to our channel, and I look forward to seeing you next time.